episode 166 of Tall Boy Radio, and when we first started this back in the day, who'd have thought we'd have got this far? 166 episodes, and if you recognise the voice, it's me, it's Gaz. I'm in the driving seat tonight. Feels like it's been a while. Before we get to our guest, and that's the little teaser, I'm going to introduce the other two reprobates that normally are with us on a Tuesday. So if you want to introduce yourself, lads.
Dave?
Yeah, welcome everybody. This episode, I think, is going to take me back quite some years to all those bed and breakfasts and failing to check out.
And there's a little teaser for what we've got in store for you, Ad.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anybody who knows us knows we do enjoy a little game of darts, as Dave there was referring to. But we've been up and we visited Scotland, and that's another little bit of a clue as to what it's about. But I'll let Gaz give you all the major information.
Yeah, so as the lads have said, we've dropped a couple of little hints as to what the episode is going to be about, and we have a guest, and I'm going to sort of quickly pass over to my good mate. I've met him online playing darts. I think started sort of during COVID. So, Mitch, do you want to sort of give us a big welcome and introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Mitch, and as Gaz said, we first met online, and I think you beat me last week, didn't you, when we were playing a game on? And he the last couple of weeks ago, and he invited me to come on, and I've been really looking forward to it, to be perfectly honest, because yeah. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, so crack on, mate.
Yeah, so like I say, we first met, I think it's during COVID, and one of our sort of mutual friends decided to create a league called Stuck at Home Darts, where he basically got people to use a sort of scoring app and play on a system called Knacker, and you basically just video call each other and you have a game of darts, and it sort of exploded. And that's how I met Mitch, and I think it ended up with like 4 or 5 leagues, and there's promotion and relegation and this, that, and the other. So, but what sort of drew me to Mitch, obviously, you know, he's a top guy and he's dead welcoming. I think you were one of the founder members of that one, or you've certainly been there certainly a lot longer than I have.
I think I'm the only one who's played in all sort of 20 odd seasons or whatever it is now. I'm the last man standing as far as that one's concerned, guys.
Yeah, and like I say, I sort of first came across Mitch, and I think we were in the heady heights of maybe sort of Div 1, and then we sort of slowly decided to sort of fall through the leagues as such, and then we ended up in 2 and 3, and we're sort of currently in 2. So fingers crossed we remain in 2, but we'll have to wait and see for another couple of weeks. But one of the things that Dave alluded to and Adam alluded to was we did an outside broadcast, and we went up to Scotland and we did a broadcast covering the Disability Darts World Cup. And for those of you, obviously, you know, you might not know Mitch. Mitch has a prosthetic arm and is an avid dart player and loves his darts. So, Mitch, do you want to just give us a sort of a brief sort of history in terms of sort of your darting career, so what you've done, how you got first involved with sort of disability darts as such, and just sort of go from there, really. Just tell us a little bit about your sort of darting history.
Well, I mean, I've played since the age of about 13, and it was good old World of Sport days with Dickie Davis, and you know, the darts was really championed on that, and good old Dickie Davis has just left us, hasn't he? You know, so
he has, yeah.
Well, we'd watch the darts and then a bit of wrestling on World of Sport, and then we go into my mate's garage, and he had a board, and it was probably, well, definitely the wrong height. We'd probably stood far too close to it, and if we hit it, we were lucky. And it's one of them things that you just fall in love with. I just fell in love with it straight away, and I started playing in a pub when I was 14. I'm sort of 6'3", so and I've always had a bit of a deep voice, so I managed to get away with it and play in the pub since I was about 14. And I've always played to an all right level. I always played all right level, you know, and until about the age of 18, and I probably played the best darts I ever played ever when I was 18. And the job that I was doing at the time, it took me away from home, and I don't know if you can recall, guys, I don't know if you go back that far, but I did a lot of work up in Rotherham, the Rotherham Steelworks on the shutdowns, and at that time they had I'm not sure if it was the UK Masters at the Rotherham Bowl, and it was just absolute pure luck that the pub that I stopped in, my digs effectively, was like the hub of where all the darts players played.
Right.
And I got to play, I got to play the greats of the game at that time. I got to play like Jockey Wilson, and it wasn't just the one game. Jockey was Jockey, he loved his beer like at all times of the day, and you go down or you get home from work and Jockey would be on the board, and it was like walking into a bar and he'd be the only person in the bar. And it was just phenomenal. But all of the old boys, they all used to sort of play in this. It was the biggest pub darts up there. The biggest darts pub up there. And I really was playing brilliant darts at the time. It was a 7 nights a week job, and working away from home, and that I wouldn't go anywhere unless there was a dartboard. And when I was working away from home, when I was in my mid-20s. It was my first night on the job, and that's when I had my accident and lost my arm at Lamworn Steelworks down in South Wales. And you think that the life's at an end then. Well, I did. I thought, oh my God, I can't play. I used to love a game of snooker and pool and that. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do? I can't play darts with one arm, but I adapted. I thought it was the only person in the world ever to lose a limb, at that time. So I got a prosthetic, and I found a way of holding the darts, and away I went. And I didn't find it made any difference at all, as such. Well, not too much difference. There's a bit of a side story as well. I was deep in addiction at the time. I was heavily addicted to, alcohol was my primary thing, and of course pubs, darts, alcohol. They're good bedfellows, So the period after I lost my arm, it was a real bad period in my life, and I used it it was a great excuse to go to the pub every single hour of every single day. I couldn't go back to work. My limb was still healing, what was left of it. And I had 18 months where I spent most of it in the pub, if I'm perfectly honest. It wasn't good for me. And I eventually settled down a bit, got a job, got another job, not paying a quarter of the money that I used to earn. But at the same time, I met my wife, and that was a huge sort of step change for me. Sort of lad about town, etc. Responsibility bore down quickly, but my addiction got worse, and kept going as if nobody knew. Everybody knew, obviously, in and around. I got to a stage in my mid-40s, and it wasn't until my mid-40s that I actually discovered that there was a disability dart scene out there, and it was only small at the time. It was in its infancy at the time, and I went along, and the people I met were absolutely amazing people. And it was about the same time where I absolutely hit my rock bottom. I went to my doctors, and my wife was by my side, and the doctor said, "You got about 8 weeks to live, mate." He says, "All your organs are beginning to fail." He said, "This is October 2012." He said, "And you won't see Christmas." And I was a man of late 40s at this time, and I thought. And he actually said to me, he said, "Do you want to do something about it?" And I said, "I suppose I'll have to." And he said, "Well, you don't have to, mate." He said, "It's your choice if you do it or if you don't do it." And I said, "Yeah, please, any help you can give me." And he helped get me into a rehab centre. And it's funny how life happens. It sort of goes. I actually now I'm working at that rehab centre, the very same rehab centre that that gave me the tools to help me out, save my life, and all these things sort of happened at the same time.
Yeah.
And I found the disability darts, and it was cathartic, if I'm honest with you. It was there was a lot of people. It sort of woke me up a little bit, because there was a lot of people there who had massive smiles on their faces, and some had terrible conditions, life-changing, life-altering, and in some cases life-ending conditions. They were terminal illness, and I met so many wonderful people, family, friends, family and their family and their friends. And we just went off. I just sort of went with it. In fact, I won 2 of the comps in my first competition. There was sort of different categories, and I won 2 of the competitions at my first one. And of course, then I had the bug even more. So
and did you find, and in terms of the people that you met there, then was that quite? Well, I mean, you mentioned it was a bit of a step change. Was it sort of an almost an epiphany moment where you thought, crikey, these guys are doing it, and that's something that I want to do? Because I know you, and I've spoken to you before, and you've always said, if someone tells me I can't do it, I basically tell them where to go, and I prove them wrong and I do it. So was something that you found quite hard initially to sort of almost to pull yourself out of that, or were the guys, did they sort of get around you quite quickly? So what time frame are you looking at from when you were at your rock bottom to sort of coming through that?
I'd come through the rehab centre before I actually started the disability darts.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was around about the same time, but I'd got myself sober by that time, and I choose to tell people. I'm very open about it. So other people aren't. It's an individual choice of what people decide to do, but I've always been upfront about it, because it helps me. It helps me because I'm confident enough, I believe, to talk to people about it, to explain why I don't have a drink. As I've already said, darts and beer go hand in hand. And so rather than say, "Oh, I don't drink," I'll just say I'm in recovery.
Right. Okay.
And I value that. And to be perfectly honest, it was. The other people didn't drink within the disability dart circuit anyway, perhaps because of the meds they're on, or for other reasons. Some too were also in a similar situation where they were in recovery from addiction. So it was never really an issue of any description, Gaz, if I'm honest with you, mate. Because if anything, it was like a comfort blanket, and it was never an issue, never a big issue at all.
Do you want to? Sorry, were you going to say something out of?
Oh well, yeah, I was just going to ask you then. So did you go down the 12-step program then? Did you use Alcoholics Anonymous, or was it something you did off your own willpower?
Oh no, I tried that 1,000 times to sort of, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I was sick of giving up one day and then starting again the next, mate. If I'm honest with you, now. The program that I went on is loosely based on the 12-step program, but I had been to Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was the deep denial that I actually had in myself, and I went with no education to my first few meetings, and there was a lady there who said about how she avoids food with any alcohol in, and I said, come on. And I challenged people, and I didn't understand the ethos of AA. I didn't understand how it works, and I didn't understand that it wasn't really acceptable to challenge people, because everybody does it in their own particular way. And I never really grasped the fellowship, although back working for the centre I work at now, which is the BAC O'Connor Centre. I went through Newcastle, Clayton Road in Newcastle, and it's there's more emphasis on the 12-step program now, and part of the recovery of people who go through the rehabilitation progress, it's mandatory that they attend meetings whilst they're on the program. It's very much up to an individual choice when they leave the program, but certainly in my experience, most people continue with those meetings. I struggle with it. I'm not a religious man. In fact, I'm an atheist. And people have told me time and time again that, you know, it's a spiritual thing as opposed to a religious thing. But that's me personally, you know. So the rehabilitation program that I was fortunate is not the word. It changed my life. It really did. They gave me the toolkit to help me. But they provided an aftercare as well. So I used that more than I did the fellowships.
Yeah.
Sorry if that was a rather long-winded answer.
No, not at all. So, you know, you sort of went through those sort of dark days, and you always had a sort of love and an enjoyment for darts. So just talk about the places you've been in, and you mentioned obviously Jockey Wilson, but the places that you've been to, the people that you've met through disability darts, it must have taken you to far-flung places in the country sort of thing, or beyond, you know. So what are some of the experiences that you have had that obviously you can talk about on camera? You know, we don't want to be too libelous as such, you know, what goes on tour stays on tour and all that.
Well, I mean, I played at the Lakeside.
Right.
You know, that was always my dream. I played at the Lakeside, and
who did you play?
Well, it was the disability darts competition. So what we weren't playing able-bodied players, although we had the opportunity. I mean, I looked around and I was playing one game, and I had Darryl Fitton saying, "Oh, good dance, mate," you know, really? And you think, oh man, it's lovely when you get all those, and the able-bodied players, you know. The Andy Fordham was our patron, and Andy, you know, they were always there, all sitting around. And
did they accept you then? I mean, obviously with your disability, was there any resentment from anybody, or did they literally just welcome you as another dart player?
On the contrary, they welcomed. In fact, I still got the photo down there. I was having the crack with Andy Fordham and Darryl Fitton. And Andy Fordham turned around and down and he said, "You want to wear that lot?" This was up in Blackpool. We were playing up in Blackpool at a comp up there. He says, "You want to wear that lot over there?" He says, "You think that we rip it out of each other? They are tearing strips off each other, absolutely savage." And he said to Darryl, and it was there still is. I mean, I'm no longer playing in the disability darts. I wasn't happy with some of the processes, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I became chairman of one of the organisations, or they asked me if I'd be chairman of one of the organisations, and of course I accepted it. I believe the work they were doing was great, but as far as I was concerned, and I deal quite heavily with safeguarding, Gaz, as you're aware, that I not have my doubts. In my opinion, the safeguarding measures were slack, to say the least. So I did what I could to sort of negotiate and ask people if they'd sort of reconsider some of the process and policies that they had in place, and unfortunately they weren't. So, you know, I stepped down with no bad feeling. I really did, and I stepped away from that organisation. And I continued with another organisation to say their policies and procedures were even worse.
Right. out of the frying pan into the fire almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So rather than these are in my opinion some of the most vulnerable people, and the levels of safeguarding should be above and beyond. Because these people, don't get me wrong, many are most were absolutely sharp as a knife, but some weren't. But at the same time, you've got to have the same level of looking after those people, if not an increased level. So I bid my farewells and stepped away, and I've just recently rejoined another organisation, although I haven't played up there yet. But I was asked along by a friend of mine, and I'm going to go up and start playing with a Stockport Disability Darts again, which I know that the processes there are absolutely watertight. They're absolutely fantastic, and I wouldn't ask in the first place, but I don't want any. All I want to do is go along and chuck darts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Am I right in saying Nathan Aspinall has a fair bit to do with the Stockport?
Yeah. Nathan's talisman, and he's really supportive. Nathan is. So, and this is what I mean. They really are. They put that arm around you. They love to crack. They love to have the crack with you. They're just normal people. Yeah, whatever normal is, whatever normal is.
Yeah.
But they're just proper folk, and that's why I love the darting community, because they are proper folk. There's no airs, no graces.
Yeah. Dave, we're going to say something.
Yeah, Mitch, I was just going to ask, without going to specifics, obviously, what kind of safeguarding issues were there that were so concerning?
Financial ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was no audits of accounts, and I said they've got to be made available. When you consider that one of the qualifying criteria, or the main qualifying criteria, was that you received PIP, personal independence payment.
Yeah.
Demonstrates that the people who were taking part in these organisations were on disability benefits. And when you're travelling the length and the breadth of the country and into Europe, then you've got to be absolutely 100% transparent when it comes to people's money.
The registered charities as well?
No.
Okay, because that's got quite a high sort of threshold and standards, hasn't it? They wouldn't want to if the picture you're painting is how they're operated. Look,
Dave, it's things may have changed, and I hope they have changed, but they weren't in place when I walked away from it. And I always said that I wouldn't go anywhere. I wouldn't entertain any other organisation unless it was absolutely 100% transparent. In fact, a friend of mine, Ian Vincent, and I actually set up another organisation. It wasn't to compete with anybody, but we were 100% transparent, absolutely 100% transparent. I have to be DBS cleared. I have to have enhanced clearance. I have to be safeguarded training for the role, the roles that have been undertaken, and so we had those measures in place, and we had policies to support that in place. And at every competition that we organised, there was a full set of accounts on signing in on the registration desk. Everybody could, have one. If they didn't want one, that's fine, but they were there if they wanted one. So everybody knew where every single penny had gone. But unfortunately, one of the organisations they didn't want us to do that.
Right.
And they're not here to defend the corner. They're not here to sort of comment on.
Yeah.
So I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, but effectively they removed our affiliation, which meant that we couldn't, or our members couldn't qualify for any world ranking points or any world ranking tournaments. So it was a bit of dirty guts. So we put a lot of effort into getting that off the ground. COVID didn't help, if I'm perfectly honest with you. That came along right at the wrong time. But it is what it is, and that's the way it went.
So in terms of sort of outside of darts, and I know a little bit about some of the things that you've done. Did you have the drive to go and do the things that you've subsequently done pre your accident, or was it basically since your accident that you've thought, right, life's for living effectively, and I'm going to go and do the things that I want to do? I mean, you mentioned briefly to myself, you've flown micro flights, you drone pilots, you work with woodwork, you've been all over the world fishing, this, that, and the other. So do you want to just talk about some of this sort of experiences that you've had, sort of, I say, outside of darts, post your accident, and paint a picture of sort of Mitch outside of darts as such?
Well, I never watched telly, and I can't watch telly because I've not got time to.
Right.
But you're exactly right in what you say, guys. I set myself little challenges, and it took me 10 years, but eventually I caught a blue marlin just before COVID, and I pulled a blue marlin in a 280 kilo blue marlin off the back of the boat in the Canaries, and that was like biggest buzz ever, man.
Yeah.
Biggest buzz, and it took me 25 minutes, and the skipper of the boat, he says, it normally takes 40 minutes to get one of them in, and you've got it in. How have you done that in 25 minutes? And I tell you what, you couldn't wipe the smile off my face for the rest of that holiday. In fact, I get a big smile just thinking about it now, mate.
I was going to say, you can see there, you chucked yourself on it.
It was massive.
You've got to have a photo somewhere of that, surely, Mitch.
There's videos, mate. I've got videos, a lot of. Fortunately, there was a girl with her fella, Dutch girl with her fella on the boat, and she just whipped her phone out and started recording when the law went off. So, thanks to her, I've got a lovely little video to watch, sort of 10 times a day if I want to. So, I sort of set myself little targets. There's not a lot I don't do, and it's because I do sort of enjoy getting. I made them shelves behind us, for instance. I made the desk that my computer's on now, and I do because I can, and I'm fortunate to be able to do so. I went and bought myself a lovely lathe, and I do a lot of work with epoxy resin and stuff like that, and I flew microlights. I didn't get my pilot's license in the end for that because it's too expensive, man. But I went and took loads of lessons in this microlight. It's a fixed wing microlight, so it's like a little plane, and I loved it. And I threatened to go back and sort of get my pilot's license. So I'm hoping I might do that one day. And
what a fantastic sort of, I say, what a fantastic mindset, that can do mindset, and all the things that you've gone through, you still come out and you're still nice and positive, and you've got that can do mindset, and you challenge yourself, and you keep challenging yourself. That's a fun, and I wish many more people, I suppose, like that, and do that. Challenge yourself every day, every week, every month. Just go and do something. And I remember one of my friends did a 12-month. What we're going to do is there's a group of friends. There was 3 or 4 of them, and they said, right, once a month for 12 months, we're going to just go do something that we've never done before, either a hobby or go somewhere or do something, and just and that's that again. That pick something new, do it, try it, have a go, see where it goes. If you enjoy it, great. Something you pick up. If it isn't, so what? You've experienced it. Move on. but what a fantastic sort of can-do, mindset that is.
Well, cheers. And I'm not sure I haven't got any, it's none of my phones that are making that buzzing noise. So I hope it's just me that can hear it and nobody else. So, yeah, but I haven't set out to do that, Gaz. I don't know. I don't know if it's just one of them things that's happened, but
yeah,
I'm in a position now where my first thought of the day isn't where's my drink.
Yeah.
I'm in a position now where I can get out of bed and I can look forward to life and enjoy my family and hopefully my family, well, I know they do because they told me, and I've got them all back because I was at risk of losing all of those.
Yeah.
So I've got all of those back, and that's precious. So I was told when I was going through rehab that boredom is a choice, and those 3 words really stuck by me.
Yeah.
And it is, boredom and isolation is a choice. And yeah, okay, many of the things that I do are done in isolation, or when I say they're done in isolation, if I'm on my lathe, I'm away there. If I'm out flying my drone, I see, that's another thing. I couldn't go out and just buy a drone and fly a drone. I had to become a commercial drone pilot because so. And I said to Sue, my wife, I says, do you know what? I said, you know Des, who does the weather on ITV? Well, my mate, who's a fly fisherman, Phil Sadler, he says, he got his picture on there of him fly fishing. And I said to my missus, I said, I've got to get a photo. I've got to get a photo on Des's backdrop when he does the weather. And I did. And I was
wow.
Well, so I took my drone out. I got a nice one at Stafford Castle, and good old Des, and I've got that on video as well. If you want to, I'm going to bore you next time I see you, Gaz, and tell
I know.
You're going to be watching.
Just forward me. I mean, in particular, the one of you with catching the marlin. That forward me that, because what we'll do is we'll perhaps tag it onto a sort of social media and stuff, so we can tag that along. So if you forward me that video, then yeah, absolutely will.
Yeah, no problem at all. No, I'm very proud of that, mate. I tell you, I love that. I love that fish. I don't know his name. We never got it on board, obviously, because it's only tag and release, so you don't actually bring them on board the boat.
No.
Obviously, it's preservation of the fish anyway. We want to keep them alive and that.
But what a fantastic story,
you're welcome to that vid, mate. Welcome to that.
Mitch, I got a question for going right back to where you started when you lost your arm in that accident, and you by the sounds of it, you didn't start to try and play darts with your right arm. You just got the prosthetic and went straight to playing with that, your left arm. Is that right, or did you try your right arm? And
no, I am right-handed. I am right.
Okay.
I couldn't throw, mate. At the moment, I couldn't throw my right hand at the moment. Gaz will tell you that they're just not
saying
going.
Nothing. I'm saying nothing. Some of the expletives that come out when he's playing darts, it's like you wouldn't believe.
Passion, that is. They're not expletives, guys. That's passion, mate. That's liquid passion coming out. That is. But no, there's nothing on that one. So before I got the old prosthetic, then I tried holding them under my armpit and holding them in my teeth, and I couldn't do that. But I'm glad you brought that up, actually, Dave, because there's a guy in disability darts, and it's called Mark Lockhart, and I haven't seen him for a while, but the throw that he's got is amazing because he holds all 3 darts. He's only got one arm. He hasn't got a prosthetic, and he holds all 3 darts in his one hand, and he throws them like that. So I'm appreciate that if people actually listen to this, they can't see what I've just done there. But he throws them one after another out the same hand. Now, Gaz, have a go at it, and you guys, I don't know if you ever tried it, but I'm lucky if I can hit a board. But and again, this is something that in fact, it was. They did a Sky broadcast about us, and Mark was on that, and it was amazing. But the pro darters, they sort of sidle up to you and say, "That's amazing how you do that," to him. And it was something. It was a sight to behold. But no, back to your original question. I I've always been right-handed. Unfortunately, that's the one I kept.
Right.
So
Well,
you were talking earlier about all the things you've been doing, and Gaz, when he asked the question, I think he said since your accident, but did I don't know if he meant since like 2012, since you visited the doctors. Is that when you started to do loads of stuff, or was it? Because by the sounds of it, and I apologize if I got this wrong, you sort of lost your arm in the early 20s, then had best part of 30 years as an addict, and then went to the doctors and said you're about to die. Is that when you had this whole release of a new life, if you like?
Yeah. To be honest with you, Dave, I couldn't have done half the stuff. I couldn't. I wasn't able to. I lost my arm at 26, got sober 49, so about 23 years.
yeah.
And I was in addiction before I lost my arm. That wasn't the reason. I just think I was also in deep denial. But I didn't know what was wrong with me. Funny enough, I only said this today. If somebody had said to me, go to therapy, I'd have said, well, therapy's for Americans, man. It's not therapy's therapy. I work on doors. I don't do therapy, mate. That's for Americans. I spent 19 weeks in rehab, in residential rehab, and it's the 19 weeks of education that I value the most in my life. It taught me so much about me, about sort of how to think about things, about where my addiction stemmed from. My addiction stemmed from when I was 10 years old. I had a series of 3 traumatic events in a short space of time. I didn't know that. I didn't have a clue about that, but it was deep inside. It was deep inside mentally. That's why I did something called self-sacrifice, self-sabotage, should I say, not self-sacrifice, self-sabotage. And I'd done that for many years. But they gave me the tools, as I say, they gave me the tools to understand and to challenge my own behaviours, really, and to set myself boundaries and have more awareness and talk about things. And again, this is something that I've been talking to. Well, we talked to 6 different groups of 15-year-olds today, about sort of 80% or 78% of all suicides in the UK are male, because we're conditioned not to talk about how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And I fell into that 78%. I wouldn't tell anybody how I felt. I'd wear the mask and tell everybody that everything's hunky-dory, mate, when really I was dying inside, So, yeah, they were really important lessons, and I value them, and I'm so grateful for them. I really am.
And is Sue, your wife, is she the one you met when you're in your late 20s, just not long after you left? She stuck with you all that time?
Yeah. Oh,
She's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, mate.
Needs a bloody medal, I bet.
Needs a whole chest full of medals, mate. I tell you. And she knows that because I tell her. She does. She knows how grateful I am, because I tried to push her and the kids away. I really did. I tried many times. And not only did she stick through, she supported me, but it was also this was something else that the centre did. They provided something called a family group, and it's you don't have to you don't have to actually be resident within. You don't have to be going through the program for your family to attend this family group. And I recommend it to anybody out there who may have family members, by the way, who are in addiction. And they don't have to physically go. They can go by Zoom now, thanks to COVID. So they're all set up for that. But this family group was such a fantastic educational tool and support for us, because Sue wasn't in addiction. Sue could take a drink of wine and put it down and not have another one for a couple of weeks and not worry about it. She was, again, I hate to use the word normal, but a regular drinker. And she, when I went in, I said to Sue, I said, they do something called family group. Will you go? And she says, oh, I'll go and I'll give it a go. Yeah, I'll go and give it a go. And I phoned her up from the centre that night, the first night that she went, and I said, how did it go? She said, there's a woman been going there, you know, for 18 months. She says, you won't get me going there in 18 months. She said, as soon as you're out of there, I'll be finished. Well, Sue went for 4 years.
Wow.
So the family group is such a good support group for people who weren't in addiction, whose family members were going through addiction, so they could share stories, and they found out that, hey, I'm not the only one here. You know, I can't understand it. I keep saying, why don't you just stop drinking? That's like saying to an anorexic, why don't you just have a steak sandwich?
Yeah. So
they were able to give each other support, and then of course Sue gave that away. She kept going along after I was out of the centre.
wow.
So I can now have a frank, open and honest conversation. If it's a hot day outside, if I was doing a bit of graft out in the back garden or something, I can go in Sue and say, do you know what, I could kill a pint of cider. And she'll say, well, you know it'll pass, don't you? And I'll say, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm able to have that conversation with her.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant support.
As well as then dealing with and helping people through addiction and the mental health traumas that they experience, do you ever speak to people about limb loss as well, and how that can affect your mental health?
Yeah, I have done. It's whenever asked, to be honest with you, the hospital used to ask me if, you know, in particular there was a farmer who lost his arm in a baler, and I mean that was his whole livelihood, farming, you know. 12 months later, he was sitting on his tractor. He made adaptations to his tractor. I hadn't got anything to do with that. I didn't help him along that way. But again, yeah, it was now and again, but not very often. It's probably an area where others may do, you know, do a bit of support as far as that's concerned. But I have done it. Yeah, I've done it a few times.
Well, one question I had, Mitch, was, and again, take you back to sort of, I say, just after you'd had the accident, and people talk about the sort of phantom pains or phantom feelings. Did you ever get that? You know, when you lose a limb, and people talk about the feeling of it still there, or they can. I obviously have no clue what that feels like, what you go through, but did you have that? Did you experience that? What was that like?
Yeah, weird, man. Weird. Well, you know, Snowy. I think you've interviewed Snowy, haven't you? Snowy Dyson.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Well, I love the guy. I'd say I love the guy. I love Snowy.
Right, we're okay, because I spoke to Adam earlier, and I was like, we spoke to Snowy obviously when we went up to Scotland, and we interviewed him, and he's very, you know, he's a very gregarious character, and he's full of life and stuff, and I was like. Adam was like, does Mitch know him? I said, I don't know. He said, if he knows him, does he like him? I said, I don't know. I said, I hope he does, because obviously if you were digging him out on camera, we'd have been like, oh, sorry, Snowy.
No, Snowy's sound, man, sound. Well, he started with the 2 legs, and then he went down to 1, and then he went down to none, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, now he's got other health issues as well. But yeah. Both Snowy and I, the old pain, not so much pains. It's like you get an itch, you know. I don't get them anymore. Yeah, it's 30 years plus since my arm's gone now, so I don't get them anymore. But it was dead weird, man, because at first I could feel my full arm, and then I could wriggle my fingers and everything. It was still there. It was just like it was there, and then over time, it receded and it worked its way up my arm. And then after about 5 years, all I could feel was like my hand at the end of my stump. Oh, weirdest feeling ever, man. Weirdest feeling, horrible feeling. But I get the occasional little twinge of a pain, but nah, not really, not after this time. But
that's really hard to, obviously I can't fathom that, because if I have an itch, if I have a pain, I can see my arm and it's there, sort of thing, you know. But it's just mind blowing that your mind still thinks that there's something there, and maybe it attributes sensations to it being there, and it actually isn't. That's just like, That's like weird stuff. That
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So,
Well, I occasionally, if something fell off the shelf, occasionally I'll go for it with my left arm to try and catch it. And of course, I ain't going to catch it, mate. I've got a good hook, but it don't catch now. Unfortunately, it's not quick enough. It don't work. But yeah,
Wow.
it was one of them.
So in terms of then, I mean, you mentioned. So what's next for Mitch then? Come on, what's your next big sort of challenge? Because you mentioned that you've done this and you've done that and you've been there, and what's next on the Mitch sort of agenda for ticking off?
I don't know really. I don't know. I tend to get little. I think I'll have a go at that. Well, I'm a welder by trade, and do you know, I was having a look on Marketplace the other night. I thought, do you know what? I haven't, I haven't, I haven't done any welding for 30 years now. And so I was having a look on Marketplace for a welder, and unfortunately, a friend of ours, Sue, another Sue, not my wife, her dad's just died. And her husband Paul, he gave me a text at the weekend. He said, "Mate," she said, "I've got all this stuff in Sam's garage." She said, "Do you want to come and have a look if there's anything that you'll make use of?" And I walked straight in. It hit me right in the face, and there was a welding set. I thought, bloody hell! I said, "Paul," I said,
Wow.
"Are you going to use?" I said, "Are you going to use that?" He said, "No." I said, "I'll have that, man." I said, I was only looking at them on Marketplace last night, so I've come away with myself a little welding set, and I've got to build another shed, because the one of. Have you been in my shed, guys? You haven't. No, you haven't been in my.
No,
I built. I
no.
built my shed. I built me. Sue don't like calling me. Don't like me calling it a shed because it's a big cabin. It's a big workshop. Well, I play darts in there. You've seen the inside of it.
Yeah. I have. Yeah.
So I built that, but I've outgrown that. So I've got to get sort of permission off the leader of the opposition to build another one, because I want to get myself a little. I'd love. My mate's got an anvil, and he wants to get rid of this anvil, and it's a proper full Monty anvil. He can't, it'd take about half a dozen blokes to pick it up. I'd love to do a little bit more on the metalwork, a little bit more forging and stuff, because I haven't done a lot of that for many, many years. But I don't know. Time will tell. Time will tell, guys.
Wow. Just, I mean, one thing I was, and I know that you do, and you've obviously always sort of played football and you're a referee. There must have got to be some ambitions to, I don't know, VAR or refereeing or something.
No, I hate VAR. Don't tell me I hate VAR. I'm a non-league football fan, mate. I'm a Stafford Rangers fan. I can't be doing with all it.
No.
I don't know about how you guys think. I think VAR's ruined it myself.
Yeah.
Toenail offside. It takes away. For me, football. I love football in its rawest form. Because if the referee gets it wrong, which we do, by the way, because you talk about that was another little thing with me refereeing. If we get it wrong, then people shout and they get emotive about things, and games hinge on decisions often. And although we can't get it right all of the time, there's no referee that I've ever met that goes out there to get it wrong on purpose. And people talk about in the game, people talk about I wish referees were consistent. Well, all you can do is ask a referee to be consistent for 90 minutes. You can't ask for all referees to be the same, because we're all different people and we all manage the game differently, and we all interpret the laws of the game differently. And I mean, I'm taking a sabbatical on a Sunday morning, and the reason is my grandson plays for West Brom in the Junior Premier League, so I want to go and see him. But so I've knocked Sunday mornings on the head for a bit, and there's nothing to say that I won't go back to it, because it's probably one of the only things that keeps me fit, bar walking up and down the hockey. So I love that side of the game, but you see, I believe because I played football for so long, I believe that there's not enough ex-players that go into the game at the moment now, and I did a presentation actually to the Staffs FA a couple of years ago for mentoring young referees, because what happens now is, and here's a fact for you: the FA bring in 5,000 new referees into the game every single season, but 7,000 leave.
Yeah.
Because of the abuse, the lack of respect that they get, and a lot of new referees are 14, 15, 16 years old, and that's to be encouraged, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's not fair on those young people that when they come out of their referees course, 2 weeks down the line, they may be in the middle of an adult game where you've got 22 blokes swearing, manipulating, putting pressure on officials to make decisions, shouting down at them. That is where the game's got to change, as far as I'm concerned.
Where I am, Mitch. Sorry, Mitch. Where I am, I coach football. I coach my lads' team. I coach them under 10 girls, and my lad was just looking at whether to get into reffing. He's 14. I don't think he's going to. It's not really for him. But when I was asking the questions, they were saying that you can coach up to an age below, so under 14, could coach up to under 13s, but you can't coach above that age until you're 18. But in terms of the ongoing support, I wasn't overly confident of how much support you get. They basically says you have to do 5 supervised matches before you can be signed off, and then if you want support or mentoring, it's available. And I thought, that's not enough. That's not enough by default. Because I've seen it, and we have a lot of young lefts on our league, and most of them, the parents are pretty good with them. But I have seen the parents, even with refs at 13, 14, shouting stuff that just is bang out of order.
And I'm with you all the way. You won't hear a dissenting voice from me. It's all Dave. And often it's parents they have to self-manage the other parents, and that isn't right, because it all boils down to learned behaviour then, doesn't it? Because if you've got a mum or a dad shouting and bawling and pointing and shouting and break his legs, etc., to sort of 8, 9, 10-year-old youngsters, then that's going to affect the way that they do things, and of course that's going to put young referees under pressure, male or female, and they're just going to leave the game, and that's what they're doing. You don't have to take my word for it. Those figures are there for all to see. That this time and people's money is being invested, and it's the referees themselves in many cases are having to pay for the referee courses, and they're just not getting the support that they need. And I understand the FA. They're in between a rock and a hard place, because if you've got sort of 5,000 new referees coming in every season, they can't be supported. They can't support them all. It's not possible to support them all. So that's why there's such an exodus every year. And that's why I think that the recruitment process, I think that any footballer who plays sort of level 7 and above, I think that it should be mandatory that every single footballer goes on a referee's course, so they understand the laws of the game, because they don't understand the laws.
And a lot of the time, the flip side, though, is that you get your referees and you look at your PG, MOL, and you look at the Premier League and your Championship and stuff, and you look at the referees and they turn around and they say, oh, he's never played, he doesn't understand the game. And actually, it really would help if you got more ex-professionals moving into refereeing, because they perhaps would be able to understand the game, and they would see it from a different point of view, and they can interpret, and whilst they know the law, they can interpret the hullabaloo of football, and then they can say, well, actually, this is the case because of this, and I've been there and I've been in that situation. So I agree with you. I do think that more footballers, ex-footballers, should go into it, just because you don't, I couldn't even name one, really, one name as such that we would know of that maybe has played. I mean, you might know Mitch, but you look at people. I mean, who so. Howard Webb, Mark Clattenburg, people, the high-profile ones. Have they ever played football? Don't know. If they have, they certainly haven't played it to a high standard. And they might have played sort of local league, Sunday league football sort of thing. But I can't really think of any ex-professional that's gone into it.
Well, I'd turn it on its head, guys. I'd absolutely turn it on its head. I think it should be part of the education. So, I mean, every team now, no matter what level they're playing at, every single team now has academies, has youth teams, etc. And I think that as part of that youth setup, the academy setups, they should do a referee's course.
Yeah.
Because for a start, right before they even get to professional level, before they get to or even come out into retirement and then perhaps give back into the game, that should be part of their education. Because, as I said to you, many of the problems that I encounter, I don't get a lot of problems, if I'm perfectly honest with you, because I believe that the way I manage is, I believe that I'll give you for instance, if a player comes in on a meaty tackle, and I mean a meaty tackle, if they come in and they're putting it, and it may be borderline yellow, but he or she definitely needs a talking to. I'll bring them over to me. I'll say, come here, and they'll come over. And this is a bit of a trick that I don't know how I learned it. I'll bring them over to me, and they're walking, and they know when they're walking towards me, they know that they've done wrong, and the crowd can see that you're talking to that player. The opposition can see that you're talking to that player, and so can his own teammates see that you're talking to that player. And when they come up to me, I'll say something like, "What did you have for your tea last night?" And they'll go, "What?" I'll say, "What did you have for your tea last night?" "Spaghetti bolognese." "Did you have Parmesan cheese on it?" "No." "Why?" I said, "You've got to have Parmesan cheese on spaghetti bolognese." And I'll say, "See that crowd over there? They can see that I'm giving you a rollicking. And see them players over there, they can see that I'm giving you a rollicking. And you know, just by the way that you've walked over to me, that you've done wrong, don't you?" And they'll say, "Yeah." And I'll say, "You're not going to do it again, are you?" And they'll say, "No," and away you'll go. And it's problem solved. It's a problem solved because, and we see it, and this is one of the reasons for I don't necessarily agree with VAR now and the upper levels of the game, because very often the only way that a referee is prepared to resolve a problem is go like that, because he has to, because he's told to, he's mandated to, by the powers that be. So they're going straight in the pocket and they're getting a yellow or they're getting a red out. And you can end a game with 12 bookings when there hasn't been a decent tackle put in during the game.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe in it's the way that you actually manage it.
I mean, Mitch, that is an example from my side with Albert playing last Sunday. We had a ref called Phil, local ref in Cheshire Leagues, and he's the best ref I've seen. And what he does is he talks to the players. So if he's given a free kick or anything, he'll have them over and he'll explain why it is he's done it. Albert was lined up in a wall, for example, and he went over, he took the time to tell them to all stand like that with one hand there, one hand protecting the knackers. And he said, if you keep your hands there and the ball hits it, I'm not giving a penalty. If you do that and it hits it, I'm giving a penalty. And as the game finished, I'm walking off with Albert, he said, Dad, that's a really good ref. As we got in the car, I saw him walking. So I put one down the window and said, Phil, I said, Albert, my lad, he says, you're the best ref we've ever had. And, he smiled because it's nice to give that honest feedback both ways, but it makes such a difference to when you've got the refs that will blow the whistle and don't even indicate why they've blown the whistle. And all the lads are getting frustrated because they've got no idea what's going on. So that talking to the players, and that goes for any age, is absolutely the difference between from managing that game and keeping it running proper and just everyone getting annoyed.
Yeah, I'm 100%. I'm 100% with you. John Hilditch. I don't know if you know John Hilditch. He used to be Division One referee, and he continued when he was no longer in it. But what a communicator! One of my inspirations, if I'm perfectly honest with you, because he'd be doing a staff senior cup game when there was 78 of us watching it on a Tuesday night in November, but you could hear him talking. You could hear him talking, his communication, and he's ref me loads of times. John has, and but he was such a good. I don't know if he's still doing it. I think he may still be doing it, occasionally. What a communicator, and you nail on the head there. If you talk to people, if you explain why you made the decisions, and a lot of it goes back down, Dave, to what I was talking about earlier. Players don't, especially on a Sunday morning, many of them don't have an understanding or a full understanding of the rules of the game. So if you explain it to them in sort of layman's terms or shorthand terms, but if you do give them that explanation, I've given you that penalty. I've given that penalty because of this reason, or I've given that decision because of that reason. Then they may not agree with you. They may not be happy with your decision, but at least you've communicated that reason across to them.
Yeah.
So there, yeah.
So I'm not sure. So in terms of hourly where we're up to, we normally try to keep things about an hour. So I don't know whether or not timing wise, obviously, are we sort of close to an hour maybe? I'm not sure quite where we're up to yet.
Pretty much bang on.
Yeah. Oh well, there you go. Then you pretty much bang on. So just before we get to sort of say our goodbyes, we just need to give a sort of a quick shout out to our sponsors, if you don't mind, Mitch. So for all your olives, nuts, pretzels, and chocolate pretzels, if you head over to ollies-ollies.com, if you do that and you enter the code TallBoyRadio, all one word, all capitals, you can get a 20% discount. And with every order placed on their website, they'll donate a school meal to a child in need with the help of their One Feeds 2. So it's been an amazing episode, and we've gone from we've talked about disability darts, we've talked about addiction, we've talked about recovery, we've talked about marlin fishing, we've talked about woodwork, we've ended up talking about refereeing and football. So just a massive thank you really from me to Mitch for coming on and sharing his sort of experiences and talking quite openly and honestly about some of the challenges he's faced and what he's done to overcome them. So Dave, I don't know whether or not you've got any sort of final thoughts, any questions for Mitch just before we wrap it up.
I've got a couple of questions, Mitch, but you've got to keep the answers brief because you're already past the hour.
Yeah,
did you make those boats behind you, or do you also go sailing?
No and no.
Okay, that was very brief. And my final question.
Purely for decorative reasons, mate. I've never been a sailor. No.
My final question: of your right shoulder, is that 2 pawns and a bishop, or a massive salt shaker?
They're actually football trophies. They're referee trophies. They are. Some of the finals I've refed. I've got a load more in the corner. Yes, so yeah, they're just trophies, mate. They're not salt shakers. So
nice.
Yeah, well, the one thing we glossed over it right from the very start. The dude said he played Jockey Wilson. That's fine. I want to know what it was like to play a great like that.
Bristow. I played Bristow competitively, and I took a leg out. The best ever finish I've ever done. It was 93. So it wasn't the best ever finish I've ever done, but I took it out against Bristow. But Jockey Wilson, character and a half, mate. I've been fortunate enough to play quite a few pro. Keith Deller, Alan Evans. So I've played quite a few over the years, and mate, but Jockey was a character, man. He was just as you see him on the telly, that was Jockey. It was just how he was. He was just a lovely, lovely fella. And Bristow as well. Bristow was a lovely, lovely guy. But yeah, he's full of himself. But, but when you're the best darter on the planet, you can be, can't you? I suppose.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but can I just say to you guys, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I know you haven't shut me up for about an hour, but it's been pretty good, mate. Thank you very much.
Honestly, no, it's been our pleasure, Mitch, and obviously, we speak relatively regularly, sort of online and stuff when we come across each other playing darts. But it's been fascinating just to get you on, just to talk about, as I say, the sort of the challenges you faced, what you've gone through, what you've now sort of come out the other side as such, and it's an amazing mindset, just the I can do sort of mindset that you've got now, and I think just the final thought for me really, and I'll echo really what Mitch said a little bit earlier, is if you are struggling with any sort of forms of addiction or some mental health issues, as a bloke, go and find somebody, go and talk to somebody, just take that step. And I would say that if you know somebody that you think is struggling as well, you be proactive and you take that step. And we did a podcast a while ago now, and one of the things that we challenged each other on was to go through your phone book, look for somebody that you hadn't really made contact with for a while, and just drop them a text. Hey, I haven't spoken to you for a while. How's things? Is everything okay? Just to get those conversations sort of happening. So I would obviously, massively encourage people and support people in doing that. So, but yeah, just a massive thank you from me again. And until next time, when no doubt the ride will take us wherever it may take us. Good night and God bless, and see you soon.